This is your daily real estate syndication show, and I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today is a highlight show that's packed with value from different guests around a specific topic. Don't forget to like and subscribe, but also go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can sign up to start investing in real estate today. I hope you enjoy the show. Our guest is Jeff Greenberg. Thanks for being on the show again, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Whitney. I'm happy to be here.
I want us to just jump right into just how you got started in the syndication business. And then, let's talk a little bit about how others can get started. And we'll move from there into just partnerships and thinking strategically about partnerships and how others get started.
Mm-hmm. The way that I got started, and I'm not saying that's the best way to get started or the only way to get started, but it is the way that I did. That I happened to go to a real estate event and meet with a guru and went and participated in his program for several years. I don't know that that's the way that it needs to be. I think that people need guidance. They need people that have more expertise than themselves. And it could be a one-on-one mentoring with somebody that has gotten into the business and has become an expert in that business and doing it that way. But, I learned it that way. I followed the program for quite some time and then was able to purchase my properties and get involved with people that way.
I hear it's a question I get weekly about different coaching programs and should somebody sign up and pay this money to this person or why not? And needing, finding a mentor, I feel like is a must. It's non-negotiable. Like everybody needs a mentor in many aspects of life, I feel like. But, as far as, you found this mentor, are there other people that maybe signed up at the same time you did, but hasn't been as successful as you that you know of? And do you know why?
Absolutely. And I would say a very large percentage of people go into those programs from a seminar, aren't successful, but I don't blame the gurus that are putting on the programs as much so as the people lack the drive. And that, I would say, that typically is the big piece. You need to have that motivation. You need to have a strong why. And you also need someone guiding you. But having somebody guiding you that, without your own internal motivation, if they can't turn that on, if they can't get that moving and you can't do it or you're not doing it, it's not going to happen. And to answer your question, why am I successful and there's others that aren't? Many others that I could think of, thousands of people that I had met over the years that aren't in the business anymore. And it's mainly, that drive, that why. Why am I doing this? Why? I would rather be doing a whole bunch of other things, attitude that if you don't get past that, you quit. Okay, this isn't important. It's not working. It's not what they said. And so they're out of it. So that's what it takes. And you talk to anyone, I believe, anyone that I've ever talked to that's been successful, unless they were, extremely lucky, has gone through this where they started questioning why they were doing this, why were they traveling all over the country and going to all these events. And you've got to have that internal drive, and finding the right mentor is also part of it. I could relate a real short story. I had a guy call me up and ask if he lived about 20 minutes away from where my meetup was. And he asked if I had anything closer to where he lived, that he didn't want to drive that far. And I'm afraid I kind of lost it and I chewed him out. And I told him, look, if you can't drive 20 minutes to go to a meeting, don't bother getting into real estate. Don't bother opening a business. Don't bother doing anything, because just stay home and watch TV, because 20 minutes is nothing. Sometimes I'll drive 2-3 hours on a work night to get to a meetup, and somebody that couldn't drive 20 minutes to come to a meeting shouldn't bother. So it's the drive. You really need to be motivated to do it and to see what's at the end of the rainbow. It's a great business, fantastic business, but you have to work it.
Yeah, I heard Terrell Fletcher speaking when he's a football player. He related like the process of becoming successful, as a professional athlete like that is that you have to love the process. And he related it to being, I think he's a boxer. I can't remember exactly, but it was like if the process means getting punched in the face, but he knows after he's punched in the face 10 times, he's going to be successful. Then he was just like, let's get it over with, But you have to be ready. You have to love the process, because you know by doing that you're going to get somewhere, you're going to be successful, but you got to be willing to be punched in the face a few times and to keep going, right? You got to have that drive like you're talking about.
Absolutely. You have to want it.
What would you say really gave you that drive, Jeff? What made you really stick it out till you've had some success now and numerous properties and kept you going through the learning process and to get to that first deal?
Initially, what it was is I was in the middle of a divorce and I saw that my retirement wasn't going to be sufficient, that I was going to be losing my house in the divorce, and I knew that I had to do something. And that was essentially the impetus that I wanted to be able to retire, and I had a bunch of grandkids. I wanted to be able to spend time and do things with my grandkids and not worry about, where the money was coming from. So, that was, I also leaving a legacy to my family and to be an asset to them and be able to help them move along in their lives. So that was essentially mine. The divorce was probably the big thing.
So essentially you just gave yourself no choice, right? this is what I've got to do and for your retirement, for your family, and we're going to make it happen.
Absolutely. And sometimes that's what it takes. Damian John has a great book that I really like called The Power of Broke. And he profiles a bunch of people that have really no other choice. They could have gone to the dark side, but instead they pushed themselves through and were successful in their businesses. And he's one of those people that grew up poor in bad conditions and pushed himself to be a success. So there's a lot of that in these stories, that people pushed themselves and they were successful because of that.
Are there other ways that you've seen people get into this business, outside of paying, a quote guru, end quote, a lot of money? Other ways that, maybe you have friends that have gotten into this business and have been successful other ways?
Well, you don't have to definitely, pay for a mentor. As you mentioned, we need mentors. We all need mentors. But that doesn't mean you have to pay for them in money. There's a lot of things that you can do for somebody that's successful. And that's not just in the real estate, but that's just about in any business. If you find a way to be of value to them and their business, to add value, you find someone from one of your real estate groups that is successful in doing fix and flips, if that's what you want to do, and you add value to their business that you can learn from them. The apprenticeship process is probably the best way to do things, but you do need to add some kind of value. So,
could you elaborate on maybe some good examples of ways to add value? Or maybe if I didn't know you, Jeff, and I was just trying to get started into this business, some ways that I could seen that you're successful, and I thought, okay, I'd really like to work with Jeff Greenberg. What would be some ways that someone could add value to somebody, that's, at your level of experience in a business like yours?
Well, typically, most of the people that I know as syndicators, there's two things that they always need. And they always need the deals, and that's, appropriate deals, not just properties that are coming out on, being sent to them, but deals, good deals, as well as equity. Those seem to be the two big ones. So, or at least they are in my circles. If somebody could actually evaluate a deal and bring a deal to me in a good market, that's been well thought out and well researched, that's certainly a huge value. The other thing is bringing in equity. If people can introduce a syndicator to new money, new people that would like to, get their money into or out of the stock market into real estate, those are the two big ways that people have worked with me in the past.
No doubt. Everybody needs deals and money, right, to make it happen.
That's all part of the business.
Our guest is Krista Testani. Thanks for being on the show, Krista.
Thank you so much for having me, Whitney. I appreciate it.
Krista, give the listeners a little bit more about who you are and how you got into this business, and then let's dive in.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Well, again, my name's Krista Testani. I live in Long Island, in case anyone can't figure that out from my very thick accent. I was an attorney. I still have my license, but having practiced for a number of years, and given the demands of that industry, a lot of hours that you have to work, a lot of time spent away from your family, I really wasn't loving what I was doing. And when you work that much, you should really love what you're doing. I transitioned out in 2007, not knowing what I was going to do next, believe it or not. It was a recommendation by my husband at the time. He had always been interested in real estate, and he was a retired firefighter. And so him and a few partners, other retired firemen, got together, and we all formed a company and decided to buy singles on Long Island and flip them. It was back in 2009. There was a lot of distressed assets, and that's what we did. But I had realized very early on that I wanted to scale this business, and I did not think buying and flipping real estate, single-family homes was a way to do it. So I ventured off, joined a mentorship program, learned about multifamily, and 2012 is when I really got into multifamily, with 2013 being my first acquisition.
Nice. So, you and I discussed it a little bit before the show, but it's a big deal. I mean, to leave, a practice, your law practice. I mean, you didn't just start that overnight, right?
No, I did not.
It
right.
took a lot of work.
It took a lot of work. And it was, I quit abruptly because it was one of those aha moments where the gentleman that I was working for a number of years, 10 years, I was very close with him in the industry, had a heart attack and died. And he was 42 at that time. And that was kind of it was a wake-up call for me. Like, what am I doing here, spending all this energy and time working, again, spending hours away from my family, and tomorrow's not guaranteed for any of us, so let me figure out what I want to do. And I quit cold turkey, which was a shocking thing for both me and my husband to do, but he was patient and very supportive, and it took me a couple of years to really figure it out. But I was very happy that I jumped into real estate, because it really truly became what I learned to be was my passion. I just got there in a very bizarre way. It wasn't as direct as most people's paths into real estate.
And I find though that numerous guests have a story, not exactly like that, but somehow where they've like burned a bridge and just jumped in with both feet.
Yes.
And it's like you don't have a choice but to make it happen.
Sink or swim. Sink or swim. Yeah, sometimes. And I think I've always operated best under pressure, and that sink or swim scenario has always propelled me to do my best. And that's exactly what happened here.
I like that. And then, how much credit and I want to get into some other stuff, but I wanted to ask, how much credit, as far as like you said, you joined a mentorship program, as far as deciding who that mentor was, and, how did you do that? I get that question often.
Because there's a lot of programs out
right
there. There's a lot of people providing education. So you got to be careful. You do have to be careful. Obviously, location was part of my choice. I wanted to physically be in front of that person. There's a lot of programs that you can do online, materials you can purchase online, but I wanted a mentor that I could sit in front of, look at eye to eye, and really get to know that person. So location was a part of the process. Then sometimes it just comes down to the gut reaction you have to someone, whether or not you feel like you're just being sold a program, or whether you know that you're dealing with someone who is doing the do. This is a piece too. I wanted a coach that was also doing multifamily investing, not just at this point coaching on it, because I wanted to be able to see him or her in action doing his business. And that's how he modeled his actual program. It was diving in with him into what he was doing and learning what he was doing as he was moving through the process. So there's a lot that goes into it's a very personal choice, but those are some of the recommendations that I would put out there to people. Live in-person coaching, I think, is a good thing.
I like that. I don't hear of too many coaches that will, I guess, be that open about their current, the current things they're working on or doing right now in the business. And I agree that that's important.
Transparency and integrity.
Yeah, that's right. And so, let's talk about that first deal. And were you all formed as a company yet, like with your current partners at that time, or, at the time you did the 50 unit?
The 50 unit.
Was that your first deal? Was the 50 unit?
My very first deal was a 20 unit. It was a smaller deal. But I syndicated. I had a company formed at that time with the partners at that time.
Okay.
I since have new partners. Chris Jackson, I formed my company in 2016. But yes, we formed an LLC and we did syndicate the deal and go out to our network with that very first deal. Because I knew from the get-go, syndication was what I needed to do. Because again, I went into multifamily to scale. So you're not going to scale that type of business by using all your own money because eventually you run out. So I syndicated from day one.
Love it. So, what gave you the confidence to syndicate that first deal? It took some training or maybe the mentor, what was it?
I truly believe that to be able to do this, because the first deal is the hardest, obviously, for all the obvious reasons. And I really believe that knowledge transforms into confidence. And that transforms you into your results. That gets you your results. So you have to arm yourself with knowledge. So yes, the mentorship program was huge. And whether it be a mentorship program or classes that you take or some type of education platform, you have to go out to your network. And even though it's your first deal, you still have to know what you're talking about. And you have to make the people that are listening to you feel comfortable that you know what you're talking about. So knowledge was huge. I leveraged my mentor. I leveraged his experience. I invested in 2 of his deals because right away I was able to go out to my network and say, I passively invested in 2 deals. I did what I'm asking you to do. And because it was my mentor, I was also more involved in those deals. So I called myself an equity investor, what I was, but I was more active. I called myself active. It was a passive investment, but I was more active because I was working with my mentor on those deals. That was huge to be able to do that because from my very first presentation, I got feedback from my investors saying, ultimately they invested, even though this is your first deal, it doesn't sound like it's your first deal. So that's important. You really have to know what you're talking about.
That's a new term for me, pactive.
Passive and active. Yeah, that's a well-used term that we use all the time.
Thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. Please subscribe and share it with your friends. We want to help you become the passive investor you've always wanted to become, but also the operator you've always wanted to become. We want to be the #1 resource for your real estate investing journey. But go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can start investing in real estate today.